The dining room glowed with candlelight, the aroma of roasted turkey thick in the air. My sister Tiffany laughed her wealthy friends' clinking wine glasses. Then she turned to me, eyes cold. "You're just an AC tech, Rachel. You're embarrassing me. Leave." My heart cracked as I walked out the door, clicking shut behind me. Would you forgive her or make her pay? Comment yes or no. I gripped my car keys, the November chill biting my skin. For years, I'd funded her dreams, my calloused hands building a business to keep her in college. Yet here I was, cast out for being less. Where are you listening from? Share your story. Has family ever made you feel worthless? The worst was yet to come. The kitchen clock ticked its faint hum, a steady pulse in my Atlanta home. I stood at the counter stirring coffee long gone cold, the bitter scent mingling with the warm cinnamon glow of a candle. Heather gifted me last Christmas. My hands rough from years gripping wrenches, clutched the mug, knuckles whitening as I stared at a fridge photo. Tiffany and me gap-toothed grinning over Mom's cranberry sauce bowl, at a Thanksgiving lost to time. That girl, my little sister, felt like a ghost now, her laughter replaced by sharp words I couldn't unhear. 5 years ago, the world shifted. I was 31, pouring my soul into Morgan HVAC services when the phone rang. Mom and Dad, celebrating their anniversary, never made it home. A drunk driver stole them in a heartbeat. The memory burns siren wails piercing the night, the hospital's sterile chill seeping into my bones. Tiffany's 14-year-old face crumpling as I held her trembling frame. My heart splintered not just for them, but for the promise I made at their graves to give Tiffany the life they dreamed of. That weight settled into my chest, heavy as the toolbox I carried daily. Tiffany was always different. I was Dad's shadow, learning to fix faucets, my hands smudged with grease. She was Mom's star, dazzling at spelling bees, her report cards a proud display of A's. I wrestled with algebra, my mind drifting to thermostats I could rewire blindfolded. "Don't you want more, Rachel?" She'd ask, her teenage voice cutting her eyes, flicking to my oil-streaked jumpsuit. Each jab pricked, but I'd smile proud of my trade. HVAC wasn't glamorous, but it was mine honest work that kept lights on businesses running. It was enough, or so I thought. I chose vocational school over college, a path Tiffany called settling. But those certifications earned through sweat-soaked nights and endless exams built Morgan HVAC, named for Mom's maiden name. By the time our parents died, I had 7 technicians, my office a chaos of invoices, framed licenses, and coffee-stained mugs. The insurance money cushioned us, but Tiffany's dreams demanded more. Westmore University, with its $56,000 tuition, was her North Star. I didn't flinch. I took on bigger contracts, drove my battered truck to late-night calls, lived simply in my split-level house. Every dollar went to her future, even as my own dreams of a bigger home, a real vacation, faded like old paint. Her acceptance letter was my triumph. I drove to her school, the envelope crinkling in my hands, my heart pounding with a joy I hadn't felt since Mom's last hug. Tiffany's eyes sparkled, tears streaking her cheeks as she read it. "You're paying for all of it?" she asked, voice trembling. Of course, I said, my throat tight. Mom and Dad would want this. Her hug was fierce, her floral perfume sharp, and for a moment we were sisters again, not guardian and ward. I framed the letter, hanging it beside Mom and Dad's wedding photo, its edges curling like a vow I'd never break. But vows have shadows. I lay awake sometimes, the ceiling fans hum, mocking my doubts. Was I enough for her? Tiffany's first year at Westmore was a blur of calls about classes, new friends, her international business major. I wired money, monthly tuition rent for her sleek apartment meal plans. A generous allowance. My days stretched endless troubleshooting compressors, at hospitals negotiating with clients, the truck's engine my lullaby. I didn't mind. Her excitement was my fuel, even when she'd drop comparisons her roommate's CFO dad, a friend's neurosurgeon mom. "Lisa's dad flies private," she'd say, her voice casual but pointed. The words stung like grit in a wound, but I brushed them off. She was young, grieving, chasing a world I couldn't touch. She'd come around. Wouldn't she? Heather saw through my denial. At our weekly diner meetup, steam rising from her mug, she'd lean forward, her voice a quiet blade. Rachel, she needs to respect you. You're not her ATM. Her words mirrored Trevor's spoken over dinner at my scuffed oak table, his fork pausing mid-bite. A construction manager with dirt under his nails. He knew my world. There's dignity in what you do, he'd say, his steady gaze anchoring me. She's got no right to shame it. I'd nod, stirring my stew, the spoons clink, loud in the silence. They were right, but duty chained me. I'd promised Mom and Dad. I couldn't let go even as Tiffany's jabs grew sharper, each one a crack in my resolve. You could have been so much more, she'd say, flipping her hair, her designer handbag, bought with my overtime, dangling from her wrist. I'd force a smile, the ache in my chest spreading. My business was thriving, employing 15 handling contracts for places like Riverside Medical Center. I was proud, even if she wasn't. During her freshman parents' weekend, she introduced me, as in building services, dodging questions about my company. I let it slide, trailing her through campus, the crunch of autumn leaves underfoot, her voice, bright as she showed me her dorm. I clung to those moments, hoping they'd bridge the gap widening between us. By her sophomore year, the shift was stark. Tiffany's calls grew brief, her tone clipped. She'd gush about Bradford, her boyfriend from old money, his family's Hamptons estate, their Paris-trained chef. I'd listen, phone pressed to my ear, the hum of my office's fluorescent lights, a dull drone. That sounds nice, I'd say, my voice hollow, the ache blooming when she skipped our Thanksgiving plans. Those days, backyard football, Dad's gratitude ritual. Mom's cranberry sauce were sacred even after our parents' deaths. But Tiffany wanted Bradford's world, not ours. I'd stare at their photo, their smiles frozen, and wonder if I was failing them. Her pre-Thanksgiving dinner invitation sparked hope. Maybe she missed me. I drove to her apartment, groceries in tow, picturing us cooking side by side, laughing like we used to. The complex, modern, and sleek was one I'd chosen, my checks covering the rent. I parked my Honda Civic, leaving the work truck behind, and climbed the stairs, the scent of her expensive candles hitting me as she opened the door. "Where's your truck?" she asked, peering past me, her relief a quiet wound. "I took the car," I said, swallowing the hurt. Inside the apartment gleamed new furniture, fresh flowers, a wine bottle chilling. "This looks lovely," I said, setting down the bags, my fingers brushing the worn canvas. Tiffany shrugged, taking the groceries. "It's important to impress Bradford's friends." Her words landed like a warning, cold as the marble counter. As we chopped vegetables, she coached me. "Just say you own a business, okay? No specifics." My knife paused, the sting sharp. "I'm not ashamed, Tiffany," I said, meeting her eyes. She sighed, dismissive. "They won't understand." The table was set, the air thick with expectation. I smoothed my sweater, my calloused hands hidden, hoping for connection. But as the guests arrived, Bradford, Sebastian, Madison, their polished voices filled the room, tales of Bali and Wall Street drowning my thoughts. Tiffany's laughter rang her eyes, avoiding mine. Something was coming, something worse than I could imagine. The November air carried a crisp bite as I parked outside my Atlanta office, the neon glow of the Morgan HVAC sign flickering against the dawn. Inside, the scent of machine oil and stale coffee greeted me. My desk a clutter of invoices and a half-empty mug. I'd barely slept, Tiffany's words. Just an AC tech looping in my mind like a cruel refrain. My fingers traced the edge of a framed photo, Mom and Dad laughing at a backyard barbecue, Tiffany a toddler on Dad's shoulders. I wanted that family back, but the sister I'd raised was slipping into a world that didn't include me. It started with Bradford. Tiffany called one evening, her voice bubbling over the phone, the hum of my truck's engine fading as I pulled over to listen. "He's from old money, Rachel." She said the words dripping with awe. "His family has an estate in the Hamptons, a chalet in Aspen. His dad's a big deal in New York." I gripped the steering wheel, my calloused hands tense. "Sounds nice." I managed, my voice flat. She didn't notice rattling on about his mother's charity boards, their Paris-trained chef. I stared at the dashboard, the faint tick of cooling metal filling the silence. When had my sister started measuring people by their wealth? Her calls grew shorter, each one a showcase of Bradford's world. They invited me to their Thanksgiving, she announced, her tone casual, but pointed. I swallowed hard, the ache in my chest blooming. Thanksgiving was ours, Mom's cranberry sauce, Dad's gratitude ritual, the backyard football games that left us breathless in the snow. Even after their deaths, we'd kept it sacred, just the two of us, plates piled high in my cozy kitchen. "Will you come home for Christmas?" I asked, my voice thinner than I meant. "Of course," she said too quickly, already distracted. "Oh, I'm hosting a pre-Thanksgiving dinner for Bradford and his friends. Want to come?" The invitation sparked a flicker of hope. Maybe she missed me too. "I'd love to," I said, picturing us chopping vegetables, laughing like we used to. "Need help cooking?" She hesitated, then brightened. "That'd be great. Bradford's friends are particular about food." The word particular landed oddly like a warning I couldn't quite grasp. I brushed it off, clinging to the chance to reconnect. "I'll be there," I promised, my heart lifting despite the unease curling in my gut. Heather wasn't convinced. Over coffee at our usual diner, the clink of plates and murmur of morning regulars around us, she leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "She's pulling away, Rachel. This Bradford guy's got her head all twisted." I sipped my coffee, its bitterness sharp on my tongue. "She's just excited," I said, more to myself than her. "She's 19, figuring things out." Heather's fork paused mid-air, her voice firm. "She's figuring out how to be a snob. You're paying for her life and she's acting like you're beneath her." I stared at my mug, the steam curling like my doubts. Was she right? The doubt grew when Tiffany called again, her voice rushed. "I'm at Bradford's parents' place this weekend," she said, the faint clink of glasses in the background. "It's unreal, marble floors, a wine cellar bigger than your house." I forced a laugh, my office chair creaking as I leaned back. "Sounds fancy," I said, my fingers brushing a worn voice. "What's their deal?" She launched into a list: his father's investment firm, his mother's art collection, their summer home's ocean view. I nodded along the hum of my office's fluorescent lights. A dull drone, but her words felt like a wedge. "They're so connected," she said, her voice glowing. "I'm learning so much about how the world really works." I wanted to ask what that meant, how their world was better than ours, than the one I'd built with sweat and late-night calls. Instead, I said, "Glad you're happy." But I wasn't. The photo on my desk seemed to mock me, Mom's smile, a reminder of the family I was losing. Tiffany's next words cut deeper. "Bradford says I could intern at his dad's firm someday. It's all about who you know, you know." My throat tightened. I knew hard work, not connections. I knew 16-hour days, clients who trusted me because I delivered. But I didn't say that. I just mumbled, "That's great, Tiff." The invitation to her dinner came a week later, and I clung to it like a lifeline. I spent the day before planning, picking out ingredients for Mom's cranberry sauce, hoping it'd spark something familiar. My kitchen smelled of sage and butter as I packed the groceries, the crinkle of the canvas bags grounding me. I drove to her apartment, the complex, sleek, and modern, every brick paid for by my checks. Parking my Honda Civic, no work truck today. I climbed the stairs, the scent of her expensive candles hitting me as she opened the door. "Where's your truck?" she asked, peering past me, her relief a quiet sting. "Took the car," I said, swallowing the hurt. Her apartment gleamed: new furniture, fresh flowers, a wine bottle chilling in an ice bucket. "This looks lovely," I said, setting the bags on the marble counter, my fingers brushing the cold surface. Tiffany shrugged, taking the groceries. "It's important to make a good impression. Bradford's friends are connected." That word again, sharp as a blade. As we chopped vegetables, her knife flashing, she glanced at me. "When they ask what you do, just say you own a business, okay? No need for specifics." My knife paused, the onion sting blurring my eyes. "I'm not ashamed of my work, Tiffany," I said, my voice steady despite the ache. She sighed, dismissive. "They won't understand." I wanted to argue to tell her about the hospital I'd saved last week, its operating room humming because of my team. But her eyes were distant already on the dinner on Bradford's world. I chopped in silence, the rhythmic thud of the knife echoing my heartbeat. "You're still bringing the cranberry sauce?" she asked, her tone softer. "Yeah," I said, a flicker of hope rising. "Mom's recipe." She nodded, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. I clung to that nod, telling myself it meant something. Heather's warning echoed as I drove home that night, the city lights blurring through my windshield. "She's embarrassed by you," she'd said, her voice cutting through the diner's warmth. I gripped the wheel. My calloused hands tensed, the hum of the engine a steady pulse. Was Tiffany ashamed of me? Of the business I'd built, the life I'd given her? The thought twisted in my chest, heavy as the toolbox I carried daily. I wanted to believe it was just a phase, that she'd come back to me. But as I pulled into my driveway, the glow of my porch light dim, I wasn't so sure. The dinner was tomorrow. I smoothed my sweater, picturing the table, the laughter, hoping for a moment of connection. But Tiffany's voice, "They won't understand," lingered a shadow over my hope. I didn't know it yet, but I was walking into a trap. The dining room shimmered under Tiffany's chandelier candlelight, dancing on polished silverware. The aroma of roasted turkey and sage filled her upscale Atlanta apartment, mingling with the sharp tang of expensive wine. I smoothed my sweater, my calloused hands tucked beneath the table, the clink of glasses and soft jazz wrapping the room in false warmth. Tiffany laughed, her eyes darting to Bradford, his cashmere sweater pristine beside her. His friends Sebastian, Madison, Zachary, Zoe, and Amanda chattered about yacht trips and Manhattan lofts, their voices a polished hum. I sat silent, an outsider in my sister's gleaming world, her warning echoing. They won't understand. I'd arrived hours early, groceries in tow, hoping to rebuild our bond. The kitchen had buzzed as we cooked, the rhythmic chop of knives slicing through onions, their sting blurring my eyes. "Don't wear your work uniform," Tiffany had said, her voice tight when I mentioned an emergency HVAC call at Riverside Medical Center. I'd rushed back after fixing their compressor, the hospital's sterile hum still in my ears, but hadn't changed. My navy jumpsuit, emblazoned with Morgan HVAC, drew her scowl. "You couldn't clean up," she hissed, shoving me toward her bedroom. "Put on anything else." I changed into jeans and a sweater, the fabric soft but foreign, my hurt swelling. "Is this okay?" I asked, my voice small. She barely glanced. "It's fine. Just help." The table was a showcase of her efforts, imported cheeses, organic vegetables, prime cuts I'd helped prepare. I arranged appetizers, the platter heavy in my hands. Tiffany's floral perfume sharp as she adjusted the flowers. Bradford arrived first, his blonde hair perfectly styled, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Rachel, right?" he said, as if we hadn't met before. The others followed their designer clothes, a stark contrast to my simple outfit. Amanda smiled warmly, her kindness a flicker of light, but Sebastian's smirk and Madison's polite nod felt like walls closing in. Dinner began, and I tried to blend in my fork, scraping quietly against the plate. "So how do you know Tiffany?" Sebastian asked, swirling his wine with practiced ease. Before I could speak, Tiffany cut in. "Rachel's my sister, just visiting." Her words stung. Just visiting. As if I hadn't paid for this apartment, this meal, her life. "I live here," I corrected softly. "I own a local business." Amanda leaned forward. "What kind?" I felt Tiffany tense beside me. "An HVAC company," I said, my voice steady. "We handle heating and cooling systems like for the new medical center." Sebastian's eyebrow arched. "So you fix air conditioners?" His tone dripped with disdain. "Among other things," I said, my cheeks warming. "We keep operating rooms at the right temperature for surgeries." Amanda's eyes lit up. "That's incredible. My uncle had surgery last year and I never thought about that." I smiled grateful, but Tiffany redirected. "Bradford, tell them about your dad's yacht." Her voice was bright, but her grip on her glass tightened, her knuckles pale. The conversation shifted to their world spring breaks, in Bali internships secured by family ties. I listened, my hands folded, the candles flicker, casting shadows on my plate. Tiffany's lies began to surface. Our dad was in business, she said, her voice smooth, as if our plumber father had owned a wrench, not a small empire. She spoke of family vacations we'd never took, her words erasing our backyard Thanksgivings. Mom's cranberry sauce, Dad's calloused hands. My chest tightened, each lie a betrayal of the photo on my fridge, their smiles fading in my mind. I couldn't stay silent. Actually, I began. Our parents made Thanksgiving special. Mom's recipe. Tiffany cut me off. No one wants that old-fashioned stuff. She snapped, her voice sharp enough to slice. The table fell silent, forks pausing. Amanda frowned, but Sebastian smirked, exchanging a glance with Zachary. Coffee? Tiffany asked, standing abruptly, her bracelet jangling, a gift from my overtime. I nodded, helping in the kitchen, the clatter of cups loud in the tension. Why act ashamed? I whispered, my voice shaking. I'm just fitting in, she hissed, her eyes avoiding mine. You wouldn't understand. Her words landed like a blow, my heart a bruised thing. I returned to the table, my smile forced, but the damage was done. The conversation resumed, Tiffany glowing as she announced, the Prescotts invited me to their Thanksgiving estate. Amanda glanced at us. What about your traditions? Tiffany waved a hand. Just boring stuff. The lie gutted me. Our Thanksgiving's Dad's gratitude ritual. Mom's laughter, the snow-dusted football games were sacred. To hear them dismissed as if our parents' memory meant nothing was a knife to my core. The final blow came later. So Rachel Bradford said, his tone obliging. Tiffany mentioned you didn't do college. Financial choice. All eyes turned to me, the room's warmth suffocating. Not really, I said, my voice level. I chose technical school for HVAC certification. It's rigorous, thousands of hours exams. Sebastian snorted. Like community college, I shook my head. Specialized. My business makes 7 figures. His wineglass froze mid-sip, but Tiffany's face flushed. Rachel doesn't help with my business, she said, cutting off Amanda's question. I'm into global markets, not local repairs. Her dismissal burned, but Sebastian's next words were worse. Always nice when the help is efficient, he said, smirking at Zachary. The table stilled, Amanda's gasp soft. Rachel's my sister, Tiffany said, laughing nervously but not correcting him. Not the reason I'm at Westmore, not the one who pays for this. I froze the comment, a physical ache, my hands trembling beneath the table. Amanda touched my arm. Ignore him, she whispered, but the room spun. Tiffany's silence louder than any insult. Then it came. You're just an AC tech, Tiffany said, her voice rising, tears of frustration in her eyes. Stop acting like it's prestigious. You crawl in attics, Rachel. It's embarrassing. You don't belong here. Just go. The words shattered me, each one a shard in my chest. Bradford murmured, That's enough, but Tiffany's eyes were steel. The silence was deafening, the candles flicker, mocking my pain. I placed my napkin down. My hands steady despite the storm inside. I'm sorry for embarrassing you, I said, my voice calm with my honest work. I stood the chair, scraping softly, and walked out, my purse heavy in my hand. Amanda's voice followed. That was uncalled for, Tiffany. But I didn't stop. The door clicked shut, the November air biting my tear-streaked face. I drove home, the city lights blurring Tiffany's words. A relentless echo. You don't belong here. My heart screamed to turn back to demand respect, but my foot stayed on the gas. Something had broken, something I couldn't name yet. The living room was dim lit, only by a single lamp, its soft glow casting shadows on the worn, leather couch. I sat hunched over my laptop, the screen's cold light burning my eyes. The scent of stale coffee lingered, the mug abandoned on the table beside a crumpled grocery receipt from Tiffany's dinner. My hands, still rough from years of wrench work, trembled as I opened my banking app. Tiffany's words. You're just an AC tech. You don't belong here. Cut deeper with each replay, a wound that wouldn't close. I'd given her everything, but now I was nothing. The drive home from her apartment had been a blur, the November rain slicking the windshield, my tears blurring the Atlanta skyline. Her voice echoed sharp as the clatter of her bracelet dismissing our parents' memory, my life's work. I'd pulled into my driveway, the porch light flickering, and sat in the truck, the engine's hum fading into silence. My chest ached not just for her cruelty, but for the sister I'd lost. The girl who'd once clung to me when Mom and Dad died. That girl was gone, replaced by someone who saw me as a shame to hide. Heather arrived an hour later, her knock sharp against the quiet. She sank onto the couch, a bottle of wine in hand, her eyes fierce. "Tell me everything," she said, pouring us glasses, the liquid glinting red in the lamplight. I recounted the dinner, the lies, Sebastian's smirk, Tiffany's outburst. My voice broke as I repeated, "She told me to leave." Heather's jaw tightened her fork, pausing over the takeout we'd ordered. "That's not ungrateful, Rachel. That's cruel," I nodded. The food untouched, its savory scent turning my stomach. "I keep thinking I did something wrong," I whispered, my fingers tracing the couch's worn arm. "Maybe I embarrassed her." "Stop that," Heather snapped, her voice a blade. "You cooked, you were polite, you paid for her life. She's the one who should be ashamed." Her words landed hard, stirring the anger I'd buried under duty. I stood pacing the room, the hardwood creaking under my socks. "I've taken extra jobs for her tuition," I said, my voice rising. "Weekends, holidays, while she's skiing with friends. And she's ashamed of me." Heather nodded, her eyes steady. "You've enabled her, Rachel. She spends your money but spits on your work." The truth stung sharp as the rain tapping my windows. I sank back onto the couch, my laptop glowing. "Let's see how much," Heather said, her voice grim. We opened my financial records, the screen a maze of numbers. Tuition payments, rent transfers, allowances, $123,000 in 18 months. I stared, the figure a weight on my chest. "That's more than my house," I murmured, my throat tight. "And she calls me just an egg tech." Heather's hand squeezed mine, warm against my cold fingers. "You've given enough," she said softly. Trevor's voice echoed hers the next night, his boots heavy on my kitchen floor. Over dinner, the clink of plates loud in the quiet. I told him everything. He listened, his construction manager's hands still, his eyes darkening. "You promised your parents you'd care for her," he said. His voice steady but enabling. "This isn't care. It's hurting you both." I nodded, stirring my soup, its steam curling like my thoughts. "The spring tuition's due soon," I said. $28,000. Trevor's gaze held mine. "What's it teaching her if you pay?" My phone buzzed, Tiffany's name flashing. I hesitated, the screen's glow harsh. Her text read, "You overreacted. You embarrassed me. Why couldn't you play along?" No apology, just blame. I showed Heather, who snorted. She still doesn't get it. I didn't reply, the silence heavy. Sleep eluded me, the ceiling fan's hum mocking my racing thoughts. Was I helping Tiffany by funding her disdain? Or was I betraying myself? The woman who'd built a business from nothing. The final straw came days later. I logged into social media, my thumb scrolling past ads until Tiffany's post stopped me cold. A photo, her smiling at Bradford's family estate, champagne glasses raised the dining room dripping with elegance. Her caption, "Grateful for my real family. Some people understand class and ambition." The words were a knife twisting deep. Real family. As if our parents' laughter, our Thanksgivings, my sacrifices were nothing. I closed the app, my hands shaking, the phone's weight unbearable. An email from Westmore University arrived that afternoon, a polite reminder of the $28,000 due. I sat at my desk, the office quiet, the hum of the heater, a faint pulse. The college fund account held $84,000, enough for 3 semesters. I stared at the numbers, my heart pounding. I'd poured my life into that account, every overtime shift, every skipped vacation. For her, but her words. Embarrassing, just an AC tech, choked me. I couldn't keep funding her contempt. I opened the banking app, the cursor blinking. My finger hovered, guilt clawing at me. Mom and Dad's faces flashed their pride in Tiffany's dreams, their trust in me. But they'd raised us to respect hard work, to value family. Tiffany had spat on that. I thought of Heather's words. Trevor's steady gaze, the photo on my fridge. I wasn't just an AC tech. I was a sister, a business owner, a woman who deserved respect. My hand steadied the decision crystallizing like frost on a window. I clicked transfer, moving the $84,000 back to my business account. The confirmation screen asked if I was sure. I paused, my breath shallow, giving myself one last chance to turn back. Then I clicked confirm. The screen flashed the transaction done. My heart raced, a mix of fear and freedom. Tiffany would face the consequences of her actions, maybe for the first time. I closed the laptop, the click sharp in the silence. I didn't know what she'd do next, but I knew I'd changed everything. The office was quiet. The hum of the heater, a faint pulse beneath the December chill. I sat at my desk, the glow of my computer screen casting shadows on framed HVAC certifications. The scent of machine oil clung to my hands, a comfort, amidst the storm brewing inside me. A week had passed since I transferred the $84,000 college fund back to my business account, the click of confirm still echoing in my mind. Tiffany's silence was louder than her dinner party outburst. "You're just an AC tech." And I braced for her reaction, my heart a tight knot. The photo on my desk, Mom and Dad smiling with toddler Tiffany, watched me, their trust heavy as ever. The call came mid-morning, my phone buzzing against a stack of invoices. Tiffany's online too. Jessica, my office manager, said, her voice hesitant. I took a breath, the receiver cold against my ear. "Hello, Tiffany," her voice exploded sharp as shattering glass. "What the hell, Rachel?" "The financial office says my tuition's unpaid. I'll be dropped from classes in 3 days." I leaned back, the chair creaking, my pulse steady. Despite her fury, I decided not to pay this semester. I said, calm but firm. Silence, then a scream. "You can't do that. You've always paid. What am I supposed to do?" I gripped the phone, the plastic digging into my palm. "You have options," I said. "Financial aid, student loans, a part-time job, or a cheaper school." Her voice rose hysterical. "This is my future. You're ruining me." The words stung, but I held my ground. "I think you know why, Tiffany. The way you treated me, the shame you feel about our family, my work. It's clear you don't respect me." She scoffed, incredulous. "This is about the dinner one comment, and you destroy my life." I shook my head, though she couldn't see. "It's not one comment. It's years of you dismissing everything I've sacrificed." "I didn't mean it," she cried, her voice cracking. I was stressed, trying to impress Bradford's friends. I closed my eyes, the office's fluorescent hum filling the pause. And that made it okay to humiliate me. She offered no apology, just sobs, each one a tug at my guilt. "I'm sorry if I hurt you," she said finally, the words hollow. "But this is petty, vindictive." I sighed, my breath shaky. "It's not revenge, Tiffany. It's about respect. I can't keep funding someone who sees me as beneath them." The call ended with her sharp fine. "I'll talk to Bradford's parents." I set the phone down, my hands trembling, the weight of her anger heavy. Had I gone too far? The question gnawed as I drove home. The Atlanta skyline dim under gray clouds. My living room welcomed me with the faint scent of cinnamon from Heather's candle. But peace eluded me. I opened my journal, the leather cover worn, and wrote, "Mom, Dad, I'm trying to honor you, but I can't keep funding her disdain. Is this right?" The pen scratch was my only answer, the words blurring with my tears. Pressure came next from unexpected corners. Margaret, a friend of Mom's, called, her voice thick with concern. "Tiffany's devastated, Rachel. She says you've cut her off completely." I stood in my kitchen, the kettle hissing, and explained her lies. Her cruelty, my decision. "I understand you're hurt," Margaret said, "but your parents wanted her educated." I gripped the counter, the marble cold. "They wanted her to respect family," I countered. She's thrown that away. William, another family friend, was blunter. Using her education as leverage isn't right. She's your responsibility. My voice hardened. She's 19, William. She's an adult making choices and facing consequences. Their words stirred doubt, each call a crack in my resolve. I sat on the couch, the leather creaking, staring at the framed photo of Tiffany's Westmore acceptance letter. Had I betrayed Mom and Dad? Heather's voice cut through when I called her the diner's clatter faint over the phone. You're doing the right thing, she said, firm. She's manipulating them just like she's tried with you, Trevor echoed her over dinner, his fork pausing mid-bite. The kitchen warm with the scent of stew. If you cave now, she learns she can treat you like trash and still get her way. Tiffany's next move came 2 days later. My doorbell rang, the sound sharp in the evening quiet. I opened the door, my breath catching. She stood there, eyes red and puffy, her designer coat replaced by a plain jacket, her hair a messy ponytail. Bradford broke up with me, she said, pushing past into the living room, the floorboards creaking. I told him I couldn't afford tuition, and he bailed. Her voice was bitter, her hands twisting a crumpled tissue. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it, but she glared. You did this. I sat across from her, the coffee table between us, the lamp's glow soft. I never wanted to hurt you, I said, my voice steady, but your actions have consequences. She sank onto the couch, deflating. I asked his parents for help. His dad said to try scholarships for disadvantaged students. His mom suggested waitressing at their country club. It was humiliating. Her words stirred sympathy, but I held firm. You treated me with contempt while taking my money, I said. That's not okay. So what now? She asked, her voice small. Drop out, transfer to community college. Lose everything. I leaned forward, the couch's leather cool against my palms. Those are your decisions, Tiffany. For the first time, you're facing a challenge I won't solve. She looked away, tears falling. Zoe and Madison said I was out of line at the dinner, she admitted. They think I should apologize. I waited, my heart pounding. And you? She met my eyes, her voice flat. I think you're vindictive, but if an apology gets my tuition back, fine. I'm sorry. The words were empty, a transaction, not remorse. I shook my head, the ache in my chest spreading. An apology isn't a trade, Tiffany. Our relationship needs to change. She stood, her jacket rustling, fear flickering in her eyes. So you're abandoning me after promising Mom and Dad? I stood too, my voice firm. I'm still your sister. But the blank check is over. She left the door, clicking shut, her footsteps fading into the night. I sank back onto the couch, the silence deafening. My journal lay open, but I couldn't write, the pen heavy in my hand. Tiffany's world was crumbling, and part of me ached to fix it. But another part, stronger now, knew this was her lesson to learn. I didn't know if she'd fight or fall, but the choice was hers. Have you ever had to stand firm against someone you love? Share your thoughts below. How did you find the strength? The February wind rattled my office window, the Atlanta skyline gray beyond the glass. I leaned back in my chair, the scent of machine oil and coffee grounding me amidst a stack of invoices. The hum of the heater filled the quiet, a steady pulse matching my thoughts. 2 months had passed since I'd cut off Tiffany's college fund, the $84,000 transfer. A wound that still ached. Her silence since our last fight. Her hollow apology, her tear-streaked exit left me torn between guilt and resolve. The photo on my desk. Mom and Dad with toddler Tiffany watched me, their smiles a silent question. Was I doing right by her? A call from Tiffany's academic advisor broke the stalemate. She's taken a job at the campus library, the woman said, her voice warm over the phone's crackle. She's applied for scholarships and is looking for more work. She's determined to stay at Westmore. I set down my pen, the ink smudging an invoice, my heart lifting. Tiffany was fighting, not falling. Thank you, I said, the words heavy with relief. Hanging up, I stared at the ceiling, the fluorescent lights buzzing. Maybe this was the lesson she needed, the one I'd been too soft to teach. I heard through Zoe, her friend, that Tiffany had moved out of her upscale apartment, my checks no longer covering the rent, and into a cramped dorm with Zoe. She's tutoring too, Zoe said over a quick call, her voice kind. She's different, Rachel, less stuck up. The words sparked hope, but I tempered it. Tiffany's apology had been a transaction, not a change. I needed proof, not promises. Still, I journaled that night, the leather cover cool under my fingers. She's trying. Is this enough? The scratch of my pen was my only answer. The living room cinnamon candle flickering. The turning point came in March. Jessica buzzed my intercom, her voice surprised. Your sister's here. I cleared my desk, my pulse quickening. Tiffany had never visited Morgan HVAC. When she stepped in, I barely recognized her. Gone were the designer clothes replaced by jeans, and a simple sweater, her hair in a loose ponytail. No makeup masking her tired eyes. I hope it's okay I stopped by, she said, hovering in the doorway, her hands twisting a worn backpack strap. Of course, I said, gesturing to a chair. Have a seat. She glanced around, her eyes lingering on my certifications, a photo of my team at Riverside Medical Center. I've never seen your office, she said, her voice soft. It's impressive. I nodded, unsure of her intent. Thanks. What brings you here? Before she could answer, my phone rang, a client emergency at Riverdale Corporate Center. I have to go, I said, standing. A cooling system's down on their 5th floor. To my shock, she asked, Can I come? I want to see what you do. Her eyes were earnest, no trace of the disdain I'd grown used to. Sure, I said, curiosity outweighing doubt. We drove to Riverdale, the truck's engine a familiar hum, the city's lights blurring past. Tiffany sat quiet, her backpack at her feet, the scent of her cheap shampoo, a stark contrast to her old floral perfume. At the site, the property manager met us, his voice tense. The Lawson Group's threatening to break their lease if we don't fix this. I nodded, leading Tiffany to the mechanical room, the hiss of vents and clank of metal filling the air. Jessica and Mark. My technicians were already diagnosing a failing compressor. I jumped in, my hands steady as I checked the system, my voice sharp with authority. For an hour, Tiffany watched, her eyes wide, as I directed. My team spoke with the manager and rigged a temporary fix. Sweat beaded my brow, the oil's tang sharp in my nose. I caught her staring, her expression unreadable, not embarrassment, but something closer to awe. When the system hummed again, the manager shook my hand. This is why we stay with you, Rachel. Unmatched. I nodded, pride warming me, and glanced at Tiffany. She looked small, her sweater frayed, but her gaze held something new. In the truck, she broke the silence. That was incredible, she said, her voice low. Everyone listened to you. The manager treated you like you were in charge. I shrugged, the wheel cool under my hands. I was. We were the only ones who could fix it. She looked out the window, the city's glow reflecting in her eyes. I never got it, she admitted. I thought you just fixed air conditioners. But it's bigger. You run this whole thing. I nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. It's designing systems, managing people, keeping clients happy. It's a business. Back at the office, we sat, the heaters hummed soft. I came to apologize, she said, her voice trembling. Not for tuition, but because I was horrible. I was a snob, Rachel. I hurt you to impress people who didn't care. Tears welled her hands, twisting the backpack strap. Why did their approval matter so much? I asked, my voice gentle. She swallowed. I wanted to belong. Bradford made me feel like I could be someone, but he dumped me when I wasn't useful. I was so stupid. Her sincerity pierced me, the ache in my chest softening. I've missed you, I said, my throat tight. But things can't go back to how they were. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I know, I'm trying to change. I'm working, applying for grants. I just want my sister back. The words hung heavy, the photo on my desk a silent witness. I leaned forward, the chair creaking. I have a proposition, I said. I won't fund Westmore, but I'll help with community college tuition if you work part-time here. Office tasks, scheduling calls, paperwork. Your business classes could help. Her eyes widened. You'd let me work here after everything. I nodded the decision firm. Everyone deserves a second chance. It'd be good for us both, you'd learn, and I need the help. She hesitated, then nodded, tears falling. I'd like that. Thank you, Rachel, for this and for waking me up. It hurt, but I needed it. Her voice broke and I felt my own eyes sting, the weight of months lifting, if only slightly. We sat in silence, the office's hum, a quiet bond. Tiffany's apology wasn't perfect, but it was real, a crack in the wall between us. I didn't know if she'd truly change, but I saw a glimpse of the sister I'd raised, the one who'd clung to me when our world fell apart. As she left her backpack slung over her shoulder, I journaled. She's trying. Maybe we can rebuild. The pen's scratch was hopeful but cautious. Something was shifting, but was it enough? The kitchen glowed with the warmth of simmering sage, the scent of roasted turkey wrapping my Atlanta home in a familiar embrace. November's chill pressed against the windows, but inside the clatter of plates and soft laughter filled the air. I stirred Mom's cranberry sauce, its sweet tart aroma rising the handwritten recipe card, stained from years of Thanksgivings past. Tiffany stood beside me, her apron dusted with flour, her hands steady as she mashed potatoes. Her simple sweater and jeans replaced the designer clothes I'd once funded, and her smile, genuine, unguarded, felt like a gift. Tonight we were sisters again, rebuilding what had been broken. 8 months had passed since I'd cut off her college fund, the $84,000 transfer, a line drawn in the sand. Since March, Tiffany had worked part-time at Morgan HVAC, her business major proving useful as she streamlined our scheduling and client calls. Her dorm room shared with Zoe was a far cry from the upscale apartment I'd paid for, but she never complained. She'd enrolled in community college, her grades strong, and took on tutoring gigs to cover expenses. Bradford had called once, sniffing around after Thanksgiving break, but she'd shut him down. I'm done with people who value status over character, she told me, her voice firm over coffee at my cluttered office desk. Tonight was our first Thanksgiving together since the dinner party disaster. Heather and Trevor joined us, their voices mingling in the dining room, the clink of glasses, a soft rhythm. I'd invited Carter, Tiffany's new boyfriend, a community college engineering student with a quiet charm. The table was set with Mom's old china, its edges chipped but precious, the candles flickering like promises kept. I glanced at Tiffany, her hair pulled back, her hands deft as she arranged rolls. This feels right, I said, my voice low. She nodded, her eyes bright. Like Mom and Dad are here. We carried the food out, the turkey golden, the cranberry sauce gleaming. Trevor carved his knife flashing while Heather poured wine, her laughter warm. Carter sat beside Tiffany, his hand brushing hers, his shy smile easing the room's tension. We sat, the chairs creaking, and I raised my glass, the wine catching the candlelight. To family, I said, my throat tight, to starting over. Glasses clinked, the sound crisp, but Tiffany's eyes held mine, a silent acknowledgement of the pain we'd crossed to get here. Dinner unfolded, the food a bridge to memory. This cranberry sauce, Heather said, spooning a dollop. It's Judy's, isn't it? I nodded, the taste sharp on my tongue. Mom's laughter echoing in my mind. Tiffany smiled, her voice soft. I forgot how good it was. We shared stories. Dad's backyard football fumbles, Mom's insistence on gratitude before dessert. Carter listened, his curiosity genuine. Your parents sound amazing, he said. Tiffany nodded, her eyes misty. They were. Rachel kept that alive. The words hit me, a warmth spreading through my chest. I glanced at her, the sister who'd once called me just an AC tech, now proud of our roots. After dinner, we cleared plates, the kitchen a chaos of leftovers and laughter. Tiffany and Carter lingered by the sink, their voices low. I overheard her say Rachel built her company from nothing. She's the hardest worker I know. Her tone, fierce with pride, brought tears to my eyes. I turned away, the dishwater warm against my hands, hiding my face. This was the closure I'd craved, not revenge but respect. Later, we gathered in the living room, the fire crackling its glow, dancing on the worn hardwood. Trevor strummed a guitar, his chords soft, while Heather recounted a disastrous Thanksgiving from years ago, her laughter infectious. Tiffany sat beside me, her shoulder brushing mine. The couch's leather cool. "I need to say something," she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. The room stilled, Trevor's guitar falling silent. She stood, her hands twisting, her eyes meeting mine. "Rachel," she began, her voice trembling, "I was awful to you. I called you embarrassing, kicked you out, acted like our family was nothing. You gave me everything, college, a home, a future, and I threw it in your face." Her tears fell glinting in the firelight. Cutting me off was the wake-up call I needed. It hurt, but it made me see what matters. "You're not just my sister. You're my hero." Her voice broke and she sank back, Carter's arm around her. The room was quiet, the fire's pop the only sound. I stood, my heart pounding, and crossed to her. "I've missed you," I said, pulling her into a hug, her sweater soft against my cheek. "We're here now." My tears dampened her hair. The scent of her shampoo, simple, no trace of the floral perfume she'd once worn. Heather clapped, breaking the tension, and Trevor raised his glass. "To second chances," he said, his voice warm. We toasted the wine, bittersweet, the moment a balm on old wounds. As the night wound down, Carter helped with dishes, his quiet efficiency a contrast to Bradford's arrogance. I caught him asking Tiffany about my work. "Your sister's business is incredible," he said, his voice earnest. "HVAC specialists like her are what the green energy sector needs." Tiffany nodded, her smile wide. "She's amazing. I'm learning that every day." Her words were a gift, proof of her change, and I felt a weight lift, the pain of her betrayal fading like smoke. We said goodnights, the front door creaking as Heather and Trevor left, their taillights fading into the cold. Carter lingered, thanking me for the meal, his handshake firm. Tiffany hugged me again, her arms tight. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she whispered. I squeezed back, my throat too full to speak. As they left, the house settled, the fire's embers glowing. I sat alone, the cranberry sauce recipe in hand, Mom's handwriting a fragile thread to the past. The fallout was clear. Tiffany had grown, her arrogance replaced by humility. Her respect for me a hard-won prize. I'd found closure not in her pain, but in our rebuilt bond. My journal lay open, the leather cover worn, and I wrote, "We made it through, Mom, Dad. She's becoming the woman you'd love." The pen's scratch was steady, my heart full. But as I closed the book, a question lingered soft as the fire's glow. Could we keep this, or would old shadows return? The June sun filtered through my office window, casting a warm glow on the cluttered desk, where invoices mingled with framed certifications. The hum of the air conditioner, a system I'd designed, filled the quiet, a reminder of the business I'd built from sweat and grit. Morgan HVAC was thriving, 2 new commercial contracts signed last month, the scent of fresh ink lingering on the paperwork. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking, and smiled at the photo of Mom and Dad, their laughter frozen in time. A year ago, I'd nearly lost my sister to her own ambition, but now we were writing a new story, one of respect, healing, and legacy. Tiffany had changed in ways I hadn't dared hope. Since our Thanksgiving reconciliation, she'd settled into community college, her straight-A grades a testament to her focus. She worked 3 afternoons a week at Morgan HVAC, her business major shining as she revamped our client database, her fingers flying across the keyboard in the office's back corner. Her dorm room, shared with Zoe, was modest, but she'd hung a photo of us from that Thanksgiving, Mom's cranberry sauce bowl gleaming between us. "It reminds me what matters," she'd said, her voice soft over coffee at my kitchen table, the steam curling like our renewed bond. Her growth wasn't just academic. She'd traded Bradford's shallow world for Carter, her engineering student boyfriend, whose quiet passion for renewable energy matched her new humility. Last weekend, they'd come for a barbecue, the backyard alive with laughter, the grill's smoky tang mingling with summer's warmth. Carter had asked about my business, his eyes bright. "HVAC specialists like you are key to green energy," he'd said. leaning against the porch rail. Tiffany had beamed her hand in his. Rachel built it all herself, she'd said, her voice fierce with pride. She's the hardest worker I know. The words, once unimaginable, warmed me like the sun on my skin. Today, Tiffany burst into my office, her backpack slung over one shoulder, a sheaf of papers in hand. I got my finals results. She announced, her smile wide, the room's fluorescent lights catching her unadorned face. Straight A's. I stood, pulling her into a hug, her sweater soft against my cheek. That's incredible, I said, my throat tight. She waved a document, her excitement palpable. My professor loved my business plan, expanding an HVAC company with green energy solutions. I used Morgan HVAC as the case study. I took the papers, the pages crisp, her handwriting neat in the margins. Solar integration, energy-efficient systems. I read, my eyebrows rising. This is good, Tiff. She grinned, leaning against my desk. Professor Wilson says it could work in the real world. I've got market research projections want to see. I nodded, the idea sparking. Bring it to our staff meeting tomorrow, I said. Pitch it. Her eyes widened, then lit with determination. Really? Okay, I'm in. A year ago, she'd cringed at my lowly trade. Now she was building on it, her pride a bridge across our past. Trevor joined us for dinner that night at my favorite Atlanta diner, the clatter of plates and hum of conversation wrapping us in comfort. Tiffany shared news of Amanda, who'd transferred to a state university after her father's investments tanked. She's happier, Tiffany said, stirring her coffee, the spoon clinking. She's dating a music major, says it's refreshing to focus on real things. I nodded, the diner's vinyl booth creaking. Good for her. Tiffany paused, her eyes meeting mine. I ran into my economics professor yesterday. He mentioned Morgan HVAC as a local success story. I couldn't stop bragging, it's your company. Her words landed deep, a balm on the scars of her betrayal. The sister who'd once called me just an AC tech now saw me clearly, a business owner, a provider, a woman of worth. I smiled, the coffee's warmth steadying me. It's ours now, I said, meaning it. She blushed, her fingers tracing the mug's rim. Carter's impressed too, she added. He wants to design green systems. Says your skills are exactly what the industry needs. I laughed, the soundlight. Bring him over again, we'll talk shop. Back home, I sat in my living room, the fire from Thanksgiving long gone, but its memory warm. My journal lay open, the leather cover worn from months of doubt and hope. I wrote, Mom, Dad. We've made it. Tiffany's becoming the woman you'd love, not for prestige, but for her heart. I'm proud of us. The pen scratch was steady. My words a vow to their memory. I'd offered Tiffany a future role at Morgan HVAC after her associate's degree, envisioning us as partners. Her business savvy complementing my technical grit. It was a legacy not of wealth, but of integrity, the kind our parents had taught us. The past year had reshaped me too. Cutting off Tiffany's fund was the hardest choice I'd made, but it taught me boundaries, the power of demanding respect. I'd grown stronger no longer. The sister who excused cruelty for duty's sake. Morgan HVAC was my proof. 15 employees, clients like Riverside Medical Center, a reputation built on trust. I traced the photo on my fridge, Mom and Dad's smiles, a quiet blessing. They'd be proud not for my revenue, but for the family I'd fought to save. Tiffany's journey wasn't over. Community college was a grind, her tutoring and office work stretching her thin. But she faced it, her resilience a mirror of the work ethic I'd modeled. Carter's steadiness grounded her, his dreams aligning with hers in ways Bradford's never could. As I closed my journal, the house settled, the air conditioner's hum, a soft echo of my own steadiness. We'd rebuilt something precious, but life was no fairy tale. Challenges would come, new pressures, old temptations. Could we hold this bond, or would time test us again? I stood the hardwood cool under my socks and looked at the cranberry sauce recipe pinned beside the photo. It was more than a dish. It was our history, our fight, our love. I smiled, the weight of the past lifting. Whatever came next, we'd face it together, sisters forged in fire. Our legacy, one of hard work and heart. Have you ever fought to rebuild a broken bond? Share your story below. What gave you the courage to try again?